We are incredibly excited to welcome you to our very first forum of 3. Today's forum is on higher education, industry, and the economy. Now, the premise of these forums are to get your feedback as we embark on the state plan for higher education for the state of New Jersey. Now, this is no easy endeavor for our office, and our office is the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education. So we call it OSHE for short. That's O-S-H-E. So you'll hear the acronym OSHE quite often today. Now, for the state plan, this isn't just going to be us, Zakiya and I in our office, crafting this. You are an integral part of it as we gather your feedback. So that's students, that's parents, that's legislators, college presidents, faculty, staff, administrators, all of you, and especially students and parents. So I would like to give you a rundown of what we're going to do today. We're going to kick off with some brief remarks. Then we are followed by a presentation on the current state of higher education by our Secretary of Higher Education. Then we're going to have a panel discussion where we're going to get to the meat of our topic today. And then we are going to segue into a Q&A session. So there's going to be actually several ways that you can give your feedback today, and that will be through Twitter. So our Twitter handles are hashtag NJ Higher Ed. So that's NJ Higher Ed or Ask OSHE. So the word ask and then O-S-H-E. So if you're on Twitter, you can just submit your question with those hashtags, and our team in the back will be collecting your questions, and we're going to be submitting that for the Q&A session. Now, there are question cards on your chairs. So if you grab those question cards, you're good. If you fill those out, our staff, can you just raise your hand briefly? So they're all around the room, and they have a blue tag that says staff. They'll be going around and collecting your questions so we can submit them for the Q&A portion with the secretary. Then, additionally, we have a wish wall. We're calling it the wish wall in the back of the room. Behind your question card, there's a Post-it note. So the question is, what is your number one wish to improve higher education in the state of New Jersey? So if you have that one wish, that magic bullet, right, to improve the state of higher education, what would it be? We want to hear from you. And additionally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention all of our online viewers that are tuning in on YouTube live at this moment. They're on NJ State Government. That's the YouTube channel if you want to jot that down. NJ State Government. So if you just Google YouTube, NJ State Government, you will go, and for those of you that didn't know, we actually have a YouTube channel, the State Government. So tune in, and this will all be recorded, so you'll be able to tune in and watch that later. Great. Now I'd like to thank President Mark McCormick, the president of Middlesex County College, for hosting us here today, and who will be sharing some remarks with us. Thank you. Mark?
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Edison campus of Middlesex County College. We are honored to host the first of the forums about important issues in higher education facing New Jersey today, sponsored by Secretary Zakiya Smith-Ellis. Before we begin today's forum, I'd like to share some information about Middlesex County College and our amazing students that we serve. Middlesex County College was founded in 1964 and graduated our first class in 1966. Here are a few statistics. Every year, we serve over 25,000 individuals, 17,000 who take one or more credit courses, another 5,500 take one or more non-credit courses, and almost 2,000 who participate in corporate training. Our student body is roughly reflective of the county as a whole. 33% Hispanic, 29% white non-Hispanic, 15% Asian, and 12% African American. 89% of our students come from our county, another 10% from counties around the state. Many of our students are either immigrants or the children of immigrants. We also have international students from 38 countries from around the world. The average age of our students is 23. We proudly claim over 55,000 graduates, The overwhelming majority of our students intend to transfer, and 70% do so to four-year colleges and universities. They attend such places around the state, every college in New Jersey, and around outside the state, including NYU, Penn State, St. John's University, and West Virginia University. They also go on to elite universities such as Columbia, Cornell, and Penn. Our primary transfer partners inform us every year that our graduates who transfer into their institutions perform as well or better than the native students. Anyone who works in a large, complex organization such as a college knows no matter how well written your strategic plan is, an organization is never truly efficient, productive, and effective unless and until all constituent employee groups work together as one. At Middlesex County College, we strive to ensure that every employee voice is heard and that our vision and mission reflect our communal values and aspirations for the community that we serve. That means listening on the part of leaders, encouraging dialogue among all employees, crafting a vision that incorporates the ideas reflective of those conversations, and then working diligently to bring everyone on board to accomplish our shared goals. Here at Middlesex, we are experimenting with new ways to include in our decision-making processes in a meaningful way the voices of faculty, staff, students, alumni, and key external stakeholders. And that includes working well with our unions, which represent many of our employees, the American Federation of Teachers, and I have the president of that union here today, Pat Payne, AFSCME, Fraternal Order of Police, and the Teamsters. By intentionally making efforts to talk about the challenges and opportunities facing our institution, and then collaborating on the development of an institutional response and related strategic initiatives, I believe we are on our way here at Middlesex to becoming a stronger institution that will serve our students and our community better. We are fortunate in New Jersey to have a governor, Murphy, leadership in the state legislature, President Sweeney and Assembly Speaker Coughlin, and Secretary Smith-Ellis, who understand and believe in the importance of higher ed in lifting up and empowering our students and their communities. The strong support of statewide leaders for making higher ed affordable and accessible to all also benefits the business community and helps energize our state economy. So as those of us in the higher ed community in New Jersey, with the assistance and support of our partners in the state and local government and business and industry, seek to provide seamless pathways for the citizens of New Jersey to an affordable, quality, higher education that prepares them to be productive employees, we know that there is always more that we can and should do. As we are gathered here today to talk about experiential education and its growing importance in helping prepare college students for the world of work, we need to make sure that there is an identified place in our academic programs for such experiences: apprenticeships, cooperative learning, internships, job shadowing, mentoring, and service learning. Middlesex County College currently offers all these experiences, and we're in discussion about ways to incorporate experiential learning into every program, including in the liberal arts. These important skills-building experiences help prepare students to be the kind of employees that businesses and industries are seeking. In my opinion, every step in the pathway to a baccalaureate degree should include opportunities for such experiences, not just in the senior year. And together, we need to ensure that all such experiences are accepted when students transfer to a four-year college or university. It is incumbent upon all sectors of higher ed, two-year and four-year, small and large, public and private, to work together to forge articulated degree paths that embrace these experiences. Participation in experiential learning opportunities is an essential component in the development of workplace competencies that equip our graduates to be able to serve with distinction in today's global workforce. Just like any inclusive organization, the higher community in New Jersey needs to engage in an ongoing dialogue and really listen to one another in order to figure out how to make that happen. Again, it's our absolute pleasure to welcome you to Middlesex County College and to this forum. Thank you, Dr. Zacchaeus Solis.
Thank you, President McCormick. So I'd like to recognize, we do not have Assemblywoman Myla J.C. with us today, but we do have her team that is here. So we'd like to thank you for being here. And we have the Governor's Higher Education Council. So we have Chairman John McGoldrick. Are you here? Hi, John. We have Pat Noctigal. Hi, Pat. And we have John Weffing. Thank you so much for joining us today. And so we do want to get kind of a pulse of the room real quick. If you are a student, do you mind taking a moment and please stand so we can recognize you? We have Estefania, yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. And who is here from industry? Do you mind please standing up from the industry? Raising hand, great. Great, thank you. Administrators, who here is a college or university administrator? Oh, great, fantastic. A faculty member? Fantastic. Anyone else working for the state? All right. So I'm remiss again. I'd like to also thank David Sokolow, who is the executive director of HESA, the Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. So thank you so much for joining us. Yes, round of applause. And my dear colleague, Carrie Booker, from the governor's office. He is a senior policy advisor. Thank you so much for that. So she needs no introduction, but I will introduce our beloved Secretary of Higher Education, Dr. Zakiya Smith-Ellis, who immediately before joining her role as secretary was at Lumina Foundation, leading the Washington, D.C. office. Lumina is one of the largest, is the largest foundation dedicated to higher education policy in the world. Before that, she was at the White House in the Obama administration, and she also worked at the U.S. Department of Education. She has several degrees, the gamut of higher education from Vanderbilt University, Harvard University, and UPenn. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Zakiya Smith-Ellis.
All right, so let's get this thing started. The whole purpose of today is to really talk about something that is on almost every student's mind when they are going through college, and we know this from evidence, and that is, what is this degree going to prepare me for later? It's on the minds of parents because they're always asking, why am I paying this money and sending my kid to college? And it's on the mind of universities and colleges, also just the general public. I think we're at a precipice point where people are asking, is college still worth it? We see these things on the news, and people are wondering, where are we at with college? What is the connection? So we thought it would be useful as we develop a state plan for higher education, as we're getting feedback and thinking about different topics, to take time and pause and talk specifically about that connection. Because I think on the other hand, we also have a worry sometimes, perhaps, among those who work at colleges, we're not just, training robots to go work in somebody's factory. We've had the announcement about Amazon coming nearby today, and the location actually in Crystal City, Virginia is being partnered with Virginia Tech. So obviously there's a connection there, but we kind of wonder, what is the appropriateness of that connection? How closely should we be linking things? So that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. We want to get your feedback, but we also want to hear from you and topics that are on your mind, and all of you who may be watching, we want to hear your feedback. So as Diana mentioned, but I have to plug again, this is the first of 3 forums. The other 2 are going to be on 2 additional topics that are in high demand and that are always on people's minds. One is college affordability, and the other is student success. Obviously, all of these things are connected and interconnected, so whether or not you succeed has to do with whether or not sometimes you're able to afford it. People sometimes don't finish because of affordability reasons. And then when you succeed, or if you succeed in college, the question becomes, what do you do later? So all of this is interconnected, but we have tried to chunk these conversations. And then we're also doing something that I hope allows people to provide feedback on any topic, whether it's these 3 or others, and that's a survey. This week, we're going to be sending out to people across the state a link to a survey that they can complete about the state of higher education in New Jersey. So at the end of this process, we want to have heard from people in one way or another, whether you come to one of the regional forums, whether you do the survey online, or whether you're here. Thank you, Assemblyman. Oh my goodness, thank you. We have another special guest in the audience. Just wave a hand. Thank you so much for coming. So we have a lot of different opportunities for people to provide feedback. Let me just start, though, with kind of answering the question, so that this question comes up almost every conversation I have. So I have a short kind of, I'm a nerd, and so I love to start with the facts. So we can have a conversation and we can talk about how we feel and what we think is moving forward, but we should ground it a little bit in what is reality. So the reality is that going to college does pay off financially, still, even still. These are data on just the median educational attainment for New Jersey, which is in green, and the rest of the U.S. is in blue. And you can tell that, living in New Jersey, you definitely make a little bit more than just if you live somewhere else in the U.S. But people that have college degrees here also get a higher return on that, whether it's an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or a professional degree. All of those categories of higher education pay off with some wage premium. Now, we know that that's not necessarily the case for every single person, but on average, it does pay off. That said, there's a lot of questions on students' minds about, why am I going to college? So there are these surveys that they do every year. And this one is from the Pew, or actually from Public Agenda, and asking students, like, what is important to you in going to college? I hope that we have a student-focused plan and that everything that we do is focused around students. So when you ask students, why are you going to college, on average, they will say, and actually more than in the past, so if you look at what their responses were in 2007 versus now, more likely to say, I'm going to college because I need skills to get a job. And also, they'll say, I want the ability to solve problems, and, actually less than in the past, they're saying, I want a sense of maturity. And I think that may also be because today's students are not just 18 years old. You heard President McCormick talk about the fact that the average age of his students are 23. Students today are older. They're more likely to be working. 75% of them work while they're in school. So work is not a foreign concept as much as, you may have your cousin or your kid or something who you think it is. Many students are working while they're in school. 24% of them are actually over the age of 25 as an undergraduate. And then many more of them are coming from racial and ethnic minority backgrounds, and so much so that I don't even know if we can call them the minority anymore, but just today's students are more diverse than maybe students in the past. So we know that these students are in this category of kind of more diverse, more likely to be working, a little bit older than what we may have thought of. And so we need to be tailoring our solutions and what we're talking about to the needs of them. Coming into this position as Secretary of Higher Education, there was already a goal that the state had for higher education, and I think it's worthwhile just pointing out what that is. That is, by 2025, having 65% of its residents have some form of post-secondary some type of post-secondary credential. And to get there, we're going to need to improve the pipeline from high school to college, but also improve college completion. The number of people who don't finish when they start, they maybe start and have some difficulty, but even though New Jersey is doing better than the rest of the nation, still, if for getting a bachelor's degree, about half of the people who start don't finish on time, so within 4 years. Now, if you give them a little bit longer, 6 years, that goes up to almost 70% in New Jersey. But I think if we were to take that back and talk about high school, if we had a 70% graduation rate from high school, people would say that's not good. So to actually be in a situation where people are paying to go to college and taking out loans for 7 of 10 of them to be finishing is challenging, and the rates are lower, unfortunately, at community colleges. And so we've got to figure out how we improve completion if we actually want to achieve this goal or to get people those benefits that we saw on the earlier slides. The other thing that I think is important to point out, particularly at a community college today, is adults. Again, students today are not just 18 years old, and there are many adults who start college, and many adults who could benefit from some kind of post-secondary education. I'll use that broader term, post-secondary education, because I'm not just talking about people going to Princeton here. It's a wide variety of skills and credentials that you could get. And if we can do that, if we can really engage adults, which is also necessary because if you look at any demographic predictions, the number of high school graduates is going down, not up. So there's just, fewer people had babies in New Jersey some 18 years ago, and that has trends and ripple effects now. And so, but that doesn't mean that there are not people in the state who couldn't benefit from some form of post-secondary education. It does mean, though, that if we have our mindset on only recruiting at high schools and just trying to find a larger number of them, that we will not be successful. And I think we need to think about that as we talk about planning for the future. But if we can engage adults, if we can really improve completion, and if we can engage the kinds of students that we know are going to college today, we will have a more equitable form of economic growth in the state of New Jersey, and it will complement everything that we're doing more broadly. So I could go on, but I actually feel like I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do on the panel in a second. So we've got a rock star group of people. We've got a couple of students who I'll introduce more formally in a minute. We have our Commissioner of Labor, Rob Acero-Angelo, who is here. And I was thinking about that because talking about the economic connection and how we're trying to make sure that people have opportunities for good jobs, how do we make sure that the skills that they have is relevant to what employers need, and how do we generally make sure that we're on a path for long-term economic growth, and who better could talk about that than our Commissioner of Labor with us today. And that's part of what the governor has talked about leading up to this point with his economic agenda. So we've got to do our part within higher education to help us get there. I want to talk a little bit about how we can make sure that as the plan that we're developing includes the right components to get us there. And we'll do that. We're going to have a brief break. I think we're going to take some pictures. We're going to bring up the panel. We're happy to share these slides later. I think the next two are just things that I've already mentioned, but there is a gap in who even goes to college from high school. So we have in New Jersey very generally high college going rates. We have good outcomes. But when you look at that by race and ethnicity and economic disadvantage and English language learners and students with disabilities, we've got some what I will call opportunities for growth in that area. And if we need to do something to get us on the right path, I think we need to look at these numbers. The other thing that I could not leave this without discussing is that we have one of the highest rates of out-migration, students who leave the state of New Jersey to go to other places. I was loving the places that you were mentioning, but you didn't mention Rutgers or Kane or all of the in-state places where I know students often transfer to those probably more than other places. But more than any other state in the nation, except for sometimes Illinois has more, New Jersey sends its students other places to go to college. So we can unpack that a little bit and talk about how do we make sure that there's a curricula that is relevant that people would like to pick here. So again, this is the goal that we use. We're going to talk about some of these kind of work-based learning opportunities today with the panel. And ultimately, we want to have a discussion that really focuses on how higher education can support the economy, how employers and educators can work together in productive ways, and ultimately, how can we make sure that we prepare students for a meaningful credential that helps them lead a good life. So that's what we're going to do in just a minute. I think we're going to take a brief break, and then we'll come back in just a second and have that discussion, and then lead into some questions from all of you that are watching online, and those of you that are here in the audience. Thank you.
Before we take our brief break, I just want to remind everyone of our hashtags, which is NJ Higher Ed and Ask OSHE. And also I'd like to recognize we have a member of the Assembly Higher Education Committee. We have Assemblyman Calabrese. Thank you so much for joining us. So fill out your question cards. This is the last call to receive questions before our Q&A session later on after the panel. Thank you. See you in a minute.
I have the honor of introducing our esteemed panel today, and let me begin with someone that I mentioned earlier, Robert Acero-Angelo, who is our Commissioner of Labor and Workforce Development for the state of New Jersey. Come on up. You can wait. Hold your applause until the end because there's so many good people. We know that you. I know that you would get. Okay, I won't read the introduction, but I have to say something about who you are, other than the fact that you are the Commissioner of Labor, which would be reason enough to be here. But let me just say that Rob has worked and is very passionate about apprenticeship, and we've worked together on the Governor's Apprenticeship Task Force and on other things, but I think of this as one of the best partners in crime on many of these issues, and I'm just glad to be able to work with him. He worked at the U.S. Department of Labor and has just done many things within his career in helping people get connected to the training that is necessary for them to be successful. I'm going to have Michelle Sakurker come up. She is the president and CEO of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, which, as you might guess from the name, is an association of the business and industry groups in New Jersey that are really thinking about some of these same issues. NJBIA has done reports on higher education and student out-migration as well, and I know Michelle personally has thought a lot about these issues that we're going to be talking about today. Next, I'm going to have Colleen Hansen come on up, and she is actually a graduate of Middlesex County College. Okay, so that gets a special applause. Yes, yes. She's also a graduate of Kane University in the state, and she is a small business owner and entrepreneur. So she has a coffee shop in Metuchen, if you all want to go check it out. Metuchen. I'm not from here. Let me get it together. Metuchen. And she was telling us a little bit earlier about how she ended up as an entrepreneur and how the skills that she learned here helped her be able to do that. But hopefully we can talk a little bit about that on the panel. And then we got a couple of other people, so give me a second. We have Estefania Ortiz, who's a student or soon-to-be graduate of St. Peter's University in business management. Another yes. She's actually originally from Trenton, and has also spent time in Jersey City and the Dominican Republic. So she can talk a little bit about her experience at St. Peter's now. And then let's see who's not here. Aaron Fickner. I was like, where are the other people? I won't introduce them if they left. Aaron Fickner, who is the president of the New Jersey Council of County Colleges, where we work obviously closely together on just how to support county colleges and thinking about these connections. Aaron was previously Commissioner of Labor in the past administration. And last but not least, we have Padma Arvind, who is a professor but also executive director of the Talent Development Center at Rutgers and works on apprenticeships there at Rutgers University. So really thankful to have all of them here today. Now we can give this wonderful panel a round of applause. So I kind of gave my own way that I think each of you are connected to this topic today. But I guess I would like to start with the students on the panel. And I would love to just get your sense of, when we talk about this topic, and you heard the introduction, and we talked a little bit outside about your experiences in higher ed, what is it that you would like to see when it comes to what colleges can do to prepare you for life after college? And either one, and I say students, but I should say something else, because you're not a student anymore.
I'm Estefania Ortiz from St. Peter's. One of the things that I would like for colleges to be able to do is to offer more internships for students. Mostly it's through networking and things like that, but sometimes students like myself need more motivation in order to apply to these internships and to be able to, I don't know, ask the professors and everybody like in the administration as well whether they have any opportunities for us, and make us, like one of my professors did, send in our resume towards him. And he spread it all around his network, and some of us got some internships, some of us didn't, but he helped us out in a certain way. And also, like another professor that I had was, he works in Wall Street right now, and he basically formulated a course where it was an online, how do I say this, like investment opportunity, and towards the end you will receive certification to be able to work in this side of finance within his company or anywhere else. He works currently at Morgan Stanley, sorry. And yeah, that's about it.
Hi, I'm Colleen. I own Kai's Cafe in Metuchen, and I'm also a alumni of Middlesex and Kane. So when I was in Middlesex, I did a internship as with a catering company, and I kind of saw how the whole small business world worked. I knew I wanted to go to business school, and I knew I wanted to one day own my own business, but really seeing it and doing it is what made me do it. It was what made me end up opening the cafe that I now run. And then also another thing in schools that was actually very helpful was a small business class that I took at Kane, where we had to write a whole business plan and then present it. And actually that business plan is what became my business plan for Kai's. So I kind of adopted it from what our group did and took some of the numbers and moved it around for years later. But it was very helpful to actually see real life experiences. Some other classes that kind of put me off from even graduating at one point, I wasn't going to even graduate, were ones that just, I know that you have to do them. You have to go through classes you don't really like, but they really are nothing that I deal with now in the real world every day. And that just kind of, I see that in some of my staff now that are all in college and trying to figure out what they want to do, is that these classes are just trying just to get a test grade. And they want to, they need to be engaged in some way. They're just coming in stressed and there's no way to even figure out how to help them because it doesn't make sense. It's nothing that you're ever going to use again. So keeping it, that stops them from wanting to keep going. They're like, well, it's a lot better to just start working and make money. And then they kind of stop doing their degree, and I get a full-time employee, but it's really, in the long run, not great for them. So.
Thank you both for your honesty and candor. One of the things that we talk about often is just this balance, and you don't want to feel like you're just a institution that serves only purposes of business, but at the same time, students sometimes are in need of that connection because otherwise the things that they're learning in class don't really seem to make sense. As a former teacher, I can tell you that if you're able to do it, it makes your questions that you ask about the content better when you actually have to apply the learning in a real context. So one thing that I would like to ask the commissioner is just how do you think about this connection between higher education and the economy, and what are some of the things that you all are doing at the Department of Labor and Workforce Development to help forge those kinds of connections?
Thank you. Well, first of all, you mentioned internships. One of the great programs that we do have is that we have a great internship matching program where we will fund up to $1,500 to an employer to match paid internships across the state through many sectors. I think it's a vastly underutilized program. I was an intern at like 4 or 5 different places when I was in high school and college. I think those are great ways to get a leg up and to figure out what you really want to do, what you're studying is meant for you. What we're doing, we're following your lead, Zakia and Lamont, and the governor, of course. And we really are a team. I work very well together because I don't think that anything I do as commissioner on workforce development can be done without working with higher ed and without the Department of Education. That's why we're all working together on apprenticeship. We announced a couple weeks ago a $4.5 million grant program for apprenticeships in non-traditional sectors. We talked about your employees not knowing that having classes that mean nothing to them, that don't know it's going to mean anything in the future. When you're an apprentice, one, you're an employee, you're getting a job right off the bat, and you're taking courses specifically related to the job path, career path that you are interested in yourself. A lot of us are parents here. How many of us, our kids come home from school, this is boring, I don't care about this. There's no secret sauce to this. If you have students, traditional or non-traditional students, who are getting paid for what they're doing and following a career path and learning in that field, they're going to be way more interested and way more driven. And on the employer side, you can see that you're not hiring somebody just based on a piece of paper and a half-hour interview. You're getting to sort of kick the tires a little bit on them, whether it be an internship, apprenticeship, or any other kind of work-based learning, to make sure that they're in the right spot for them and that they're going to provide value for you as an employer.
Thank you. Michelle, I'm interested, kind of following up on that, those kinds of connections, where you sit at in JBIA, what kinds of connections that have been successful between higher education and industry to give students that real-world experience have you seen?
And absolutely, as the Business and Industry Association, our mission in life is to see new jobs be created every day, but we don't finish our work if we don't ensure that there's a talent pipeline to fill those jobs. And so workforce development is extremely important for us and our members. I hear every day from my members that the students that are coming out are not as best prepared for the opportunities that are in the workplace today. And so what's really important in collaboration is marrying the business community back to academia so that the business community can help to inform the academics that then build the skill set. So when the student walks out on day one, they can walk right into the job. At BIA, we're very proud to be a facilitator and a coordinator in that space. We stood up a post-secondary education task force last year, which has representation from every aspect, be it K-12, career and technical education, community college, traditional public and private 4-year, 3 departments of state. Thank you very much, both of you, for participating, along with Department of Education, our members, millennials, and nonprofits. Everybody working around the table together, talking about how do we best connect the dots. I think I said 5 times today, the opportunity is tremendous for us because we've got all these great things floating out there. Now it's incumbent upon us to stitch it all together in the strategy. And I know, Secretary, that's what you're trying to do with your higher ed strategy, and we're very thankful to be a part of that and bring the business voice to that.
So there's a really clear example of how this is happening at Rutgers right now, which I think sometimes people might not expect. So Padma, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what the program that you lead at Rutgers and what that is for students.
At the Rutgers Talent Development Center, we create various pathways in both healthcare as well as in life sciences. And these pathways are actually intertwined with apprenticeship that we work with the employers. So most of these apprenticeships are actually customized, and they are new standards which are developed and worked with the employer. So as a higher education institution, we really would like to tell everybody that the education need to cater to the employer need. And that is something that we had been discussing with the Department of Labor since the last couple of years, and it is continued discussion, is that education has to cater to the industry recognized credential, and it has to follow that industry recognized credential, so people's employability skills, employability will be really high. And we had created several apprenticeship programs, and this curriculum can be assessed for college education and college credits. So people can actually articulate that college credits into their undergraduate or graduate level of education, or even go to community college. Like especially, for example, one of our program is the EMT paramedics program, and several community colleges, they offer the paramedics program, which is an apprenticeable occupation, and that can give actually 61 college credit. So not only that students can get they can make money as a paramedics, but they can get an associate degree from the community college while they are working, and they can earn that trade skill as well. And there is a huge demand for paramedics in New Jersey. And this is what I think the Talent Development Center at Rutgers is working on, identifying these demand occupations and creating this pipeline. And another thing I would like to stress upon is that whether it is professional development or even college education, these days you do see multi-generational students in college. So the learning has to be catering to that. But each generation has their own preferential learning. So when you have a class of students who are, encompassing from millennials to, baby boomers in a professional setting or in a classroom, then the education need to be altered according to that, so that you don't see a dropout in the classroom. And that is something that I would like to say, that whether you wanted to combine the technical skills or whether you wanted to combine the classroom education, I think we needed to focus on that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, Aaron, you're now the president of the Council of County Colleges, which means you work with all 19 county colleges on different types of programs, and we work together on thinking about transfer and other things. But one of the things I think specifically that you have is this connection, both having this position within higher education, but you also previously served as Commissioner of Labor. So what are you seeing at the Council on County Colleges, and how do you think about how higher education and industry can partner in effective ways, and what should we be taking with us as we write the future for the state?
It's a big question, Secretary, but
Yeah,
thank
just
you.
30 seconds if you can. Yep.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with this all-star panel talking about a very important topic. I think that our colleges share this commitment to work-based learning. I think many of our colleges have good work-based learning foundations, but there's a lot more to be done. I know Mark has talked about the passion and the commitment here at Middlesex, but our other colleges are also making a commitment to expand work-based learning, which can mean a registered apprenticeship program. It may also mean informal apprenticeship programs or co-ops or internships or even service learning. And I think any opportunity we can get to combine both theory and practice for our students. I just had the honor to spend a week in Germany studying the German apprenticeship model, and we had visits to Deutsche Bank and Siemens and John Deere, a whole diversity of companies. They all talk about the importance of theory and practice, and I think we can learn some from them. I think it's important that we find ways to integrate the work-based learning experiences with the curriculum. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about how to do that with apprenticeships and other models to make sure that the work experience that someone is getting is also connected and reflected into what they're learning in the classroom. Two other points quickly that I would make. One is we cannot forget how important career guidance and career planning is to this discussion. I think way too many students come to college not knowing exactly where they're headed. Our colleges have worked very hard over the last couple of years to develop a guided pathways model to make sure that more students have a plan that they can follow that lead them to a job and lead them to a career. And then the third point, which has come up a couple of times, we have to make sure that more of our students are earning industry-valued, industry-recognized credentials while they're in college. So one of, I think, the greatest assets we have in our 19 community colleges is our workforce development programs, our non-credit side of the institution. And we are starting to do work to break down the barriers between the non-credit and the credit so that students in credit programs can get industry-valued credentials while they're getting associate's degrees. And also while students who are in non-credit programs have a path to getting on a direction so they can earn an associate's degree and then move up in higher education.
Commissioner, can I ask you, can you just break down for those who may not be familiar, what is an apprenticeship? What does that actually mean, and what is?
Oh, me?
Yes, you're commissioner right now.
I'm the third best commissioner in the room right now. An apprenticeship is a combination of work on-the-job learning while getting paid as an employee. Usually, if you're talking about registered apprenticeship, which is recognized by the U.S. Department of Labor, usually a minimum of 144 hours of classroom learning, as well as a career pathway and a graduated salary across however many years it takes. Traditionally, they're 4 years, but there's all different kinds of methods and models of apprenticeship. We're trying to be as flexible as possible, not just with the styles of apprenticeship, but as far as the folks who can be taking part in them. We're very proud that we broke all Department of Labor records last week when we had our first technical assistance workshop for these grants. We had a maximum capacity at our first one. We had to add a second one that day, which was standing room only, and now we're adding a third and a fourth one because of the large swath and breadth of different folks who were interested. We had individual employers there, we had trade associations there, all kinds of community college folks were there, probably some folks in this room were there, and just workers groups, all wanting to sort of find out what's going on. They sort of see that this is where things are going. And the apprenticeship is so important, and I talk to Michelle about this all the time. And I want to, obviously we're keying on apprenticeship, but any kind of work-based learning is important at this point in time. I've been on the job for 10 months now, and coming into this administration and being my first time as commissioner, and meeting with a lot of great businesses in New Jersey, I was worried about being upset about this regulation or over enforcement. I haven't heard about that once. All they want to talk about is helping us. Yes, no. Listen, we all have questions about things that are coming out new. Like I have questions also about our new regs on paid sick and all the other stuff. But every employer to a T wants to ask us, how can we get help finding workers? We can't find employees with this skill or that credential. Or we have some, but we can't get them to our place of business. We can't get them to training. What are our transportation barriers? I've been so thrilled to have so many great employer partners, great employer trade association partners who are willing to put skin in the game right now to train a workforce, to keep a workforce, to support them. And it's our role as the government, as the whole of government, us, higher ed, education, HISA, in my mind, the whole government can work together now to put these systems in place so that when this white-hot economy at some point in the future cools off, but hopefully doesn't, that these systems are in place to support our workforce, to make them the true incentive that they are for employers to come and grow in the state. Because we're going to put systems in place now that will last forever.
Can I go back and ask the students, and it looks like you have something you would like to share, Stephania, but just if there was something that you wish you had known, kind of even hearing the conversation today and where you sit and thinking about what your next steps are, if we could do a better job in preparing you coming in to thinking about how you would organize your college life, what should we be telling students on the front end? How can we do a better job, as well as any other reflections you may have?
One of the things that I had trouble a lot was having teachers really engaged with us, because they are, but sometimes you want them to be individually engaged with you, individually helping you develop yourself as a student and hopefully as a future professional. Another thing that I would like to add is I feel like universities should have internships and all of those things as a mandatory requirement in order to graduate, because many students, given the fact that it's not a requirement, don't go out and search for these internships. Or even in their industry, like most of my internships, I didn't do in business. I did them in politics because that's what I like, you know? But I feel that it has to be mandatory because just like how in my high school in St. Dominic's in Jersey City, you have to have, let's say, 140 hours of community service in order to graduate. You just have to make something as important as job placement, as community service, as anything that benefits the community in the long run, mandatory. Because that's the only way that some students will do it, you know? Some students just completely do not want to do internships because they feel like they want already a full-time job, and sometimes that's not the case. And speaking of what he said about employers wanting to engage students and bring them in, I feel sometimes that students, they want to be prepared for this job, but I also feel like employers should give them a chance to develop this skill while, even if they don't have it when they're first hired, to give them like a training. Like for example, I may not know how to do scheduling and advanced work, but I will learn that on the job, you know? Yeah. So, yeah.
I agree with a lot of what she said about being engaged in the classroom and how it should be a core requirement to do an internship. When I went on to my four-year school, there was no requirement at all, but I feel I would have understood a lot more of what was going on, even if it's in different areas, that you're not always just doing what you want to do, because that changes so much after you get out of college and even 5 or 10 years later. But being actually in the industry and seeing, if I was in the industry that I'm in now, and seeing like how it all worked and how much work was put into it, I would have known more. I would have been better set up to do that. And the same thing with people today. They need to learn the basic skills of just talking to people, working with other people, not just in the classroom, because in the classroom you have to do it for a grade, but in real life you have to actually form relationships that don't have to be friendships, but you have to be able to function with other people. And that's something that I see lacking a lot, even just on like a part-time job basis, of talking to people and basic skills that they just don't have. Because they don't have to talk to anybody, they don't have to deal with anything that they don't want to because it's not a requirement. Once, I own a cafe, so it's small business, it's very small town, so they talk to the same people every day, and even in that situation, it's sometimes hard to get them to open up and really realize, you know, just basic things. So if they were to do that all 4 years or 2 years, depending on what school they went to, they'd be able to see like, oh no, I'm not that much of a people person. I should do something that doesn't require me to talk to people all the time, or I really like engaging with people. So I'm not gonna sit behind a desk all day. I'm gonna get out there and do something that I'm not just doing a 9 to 5. I wanna do more work. So that's something that I definitely think would have helped when I was in college, because I was not a people person before working. I would have never expected myself to be talking to hundreds of people every day, sitting on different boards in my town and different things like that, because it just wasn't the person I was. But by the job experience and actually just throwing myself into it and doing it is how I became myself, and I became able to talk about things that I like and how I actually feel. And I think that if we learn that earlier on in college, it's definitely going to open up people to doing what they really want to do and getting degrees in something they actually want and not just the money involved in it.
Michelle, can I ask you about some of the reflections, but also what are the things that employers tell you that students don't have, you know, that they should have?
Oh, absolutely. And I do want to just give one follow-up here, because a significant piece that came out of our task force work was, while we're here talking about post-secondary, which comes after graduation, the articulation down, we have to get visibility to the students and the parents and the guidance counselors in K-12. If we don't do that, it's too late in the process. And we have to talk about career pathways at a young age, because a realization is, as much as we saw the statistics up there, I'm a lifelong learner, but you know, you do it this way. This is how we tell our kids they need to kind of do this trajectory that you just keep going and going. Well, due to affordability, we have to do a little more this way and earn and learn along the way. And not every student is ready and or meant to go to a 4-year education coming out of high school. And we have to have those honest discussions because we have hollowed out the middle class in the state of New Jersey because we stopped training to middle-level skilled jobs in the state of New Jersey. So that dovetails right into what my companies tell me is missing. Absolutely on the technical side, the actual skills, technical skills are a challenge right now. NJBIA is born on manufacturing 108 years ago. We grew up representing manufacturers. Today we represent every industry and type of business. But I hear every day from my manufacturers that they cannot hire people who have the skills to come in to operate the new technology in our manufacturing plants. This isn't the assembly lines of yesterday. And so these are credential programs where literally I can put a student in a classroom here at this community college for 1 year on an academic program that my company helped them to write, and we can deliver a welder at the other side of it who can go out and make almost, $100,000 in their first year, and I'm not kidding. These are high-paid jobs. So the technical skills. The other piece, though, is the employability skills. And by that, what I mean, sometimes people call it the soft skills, but it's showing up on time, it's ability to communicate clearly, and it's critical thinking, problem solving. And I think what happened, I have 26-year-old twins, okay? I was always solving their problems when they were little. Even though I taught them to be problem solvers, it's really easy for mom to step in and enable them, right? I am a parent who clearly was of the generation of enabling that next generation. It didn't do them any good by doing that, okay? And so that critical thinking and that problem solving is significantly important, and we have to focus on those employability skills early on, and communication, because now today with technology, everything is here. We have to be able to do this, because look how important this is, right? This is how we connect, right? You feel the connection. If you and I were doing this, we wouldn't have this, right?
Even in banking as well, when you're calling into like a bank or a healthcare provider, you don't want to speak to a machine. You want to speak to an actual person, because at the end of the day, it's a person that will get you the service that you need. It's not a computer, Yeah,
good point.
So can I ask just the entire panel, just based on what Michelle just said about the businesses kind of working together with the institutions to create those partnerships, and maybe Padma and Aaron can share a little bit from the higher education perspective, what does that actually look like? What does that mean? Does it mean they provide some funding along with it? Does that mean that they, partner with the faculty there to design courses? How do they make sure that the courses are relevant? Even, not just the very technical skills, but kind of throughout, just up to date.
Do you want this one?
Yes, that one works.
Switch.
So when we had a high quality employer partnership meetings, when we discussed with our employers about the employability skills and talked to them about that, and we did invite them to input into some of our program and the curriculum, what exactly that they need. But oftentimes, I think even within our faculty meetings and when we discuss about the customer service, we also realize that we discuss what the young millennial population that they lack, but oftentimes we don't include them into the conversation. There was actually a TV show on Channel 8 this weekend about the millennial population, and they were discussing about it is not that they are lacking something, it is the communication link between the millennial population and us and the employer, that we needed to understand how they want to work. Maybe that their work ethics are slightly different than what we think that they should be doing, and we should be customizing it according to that. Maybe they wanted to have flexible work hours, not like the way with the traditional working time that we think it should be, and maybe they needed to work slightly different. So we had several meetings with the employers, and we designed some customer service curriculum, we designed some employability curriculum, and we had looked at some of the online programs as well. And this program actually, when I watched it, and I think it was in New Jersey, they had discussed a lot about how millennial population would like to work. They actually call it as emerging leaders of the future. And they were talking about instead of discussing about jobs for the future, instead of discussing about technology for the future and talking about all of those things, if you still come back and discuss about writing a 40-page essay as an assignment, then these things actually not interest the young population. It should be more like they are result-oriented. They wanted to have something very quick, and they are not really like, somebody who wants to be in a job for next 10 years. Their communications are very different. So we often have a different, communication. And I think probably we should have some of those young leaders in a discussion group and discuss with them and ask them exactly where is this communication. I believe there was a panel discussion organized by one of the Workforce Development Board director last year, and we had many millennials on the panel, and we had the same discussion with them about the employability skills as well as about the soft skills, and we had a great length of discussion with some of the employers as well. And this is what exactly came out, that what we think and what they think, there is a disalignment, and we needed to reorient ourselves with them. But then we did have a lot of conversation within our business school as well as with our other schools within School of Arts and Science, and we thought we needed to recreate and realign some of those skills, and the career service should work with the students and also with the employers. I think there is a lot more to be done, and we needed to include the youngsters into this, into this conversation, and we should not just be discussing it without them on the table.
Yes, please. Sorry.
I do agree that there is a disconnect, but I don't think it's really, I think it's more the fact that they being me, I guess, because I am technically a millennial, but they don't come with the skills that how to talk to people, what is appropriate to send. They take the easy way out in text. I get texts every day about the craziest things. And these aren't things that are in my head because of how I was raised. They're not appropriate to ask your employer. It's the comfortability they feel, which is fine, which is great, and it makes for a great work atmosphere, but they don't know how to switch that off. It's the point that they're not being taught how to write a resume. I get resumes every day that are all lowercase or that are just shorthand, and they're not learning how to address a boss, how to write an email, those kinds of things are not being taught. I mean, I never took a class in it either, but the way I was taught was always how to have respect for the people that are your superiors, and I don't feel people, at least that come to me, that I'm getting that we're getting that they're not feeling. They find the comfortability, and then you're their friend. That's it. And they don't understand why you're expecting X, Y, and Z from them because we're friends. But really, they're there to get a job done, and that's really even a lot of my friends. I get a call every day. Well, my boss didn't give me another raise because I did X, Y, Z. But that was your job to do X, Y, Z. It's not. There's so much. What they're they're expecting to get more, and not having to work for it. So I know that's the opposite of what I'm supposed to say. But
There's nothing that you're supposed to say here.
How I actually feel.
No. We didn't pre-judge the answers. We did pre-do some of the questions, but not the answers.
But if I could, so perfect balance, because everybody owns a piece of this. And, it started with what do the companies tell me? So when I go out and I talk to the next generation workforce, because I go on college campuses all the time and I engage, because we do a lot of work around millennial out-migration, and I need to understand, why won't you stay in New Jersey? Okay, why don't you come to school in New Jersey? Why did you come to school in New Jersey? This all helps to inform how we move policy on keeping students here. But then, at the same time, I do an exercise with the students, and I call it the values exercise. I want to understand what they value, and I need to hear from them what it takes for them to stay here, and then it's incumbent upon me to take that message back and deliver it to my employers. It's a two-way street. And so when I have companies that are kind of whining about the next generation and saying what they do or don't have, the reality is they are the workforce, okay? And if you want to attract that workforce, you're going to need to do certain things. And if you want to attract a competitive workforce, you're going to need to do certain things. So take a look right in your own backyard. What does your workspace look like? Do you believe in flexibility? Do you have diversity? All the things that are important to this generation, we need to wake up and recognize that the work environment requires some change, and that's incumbent upon the employer.
And I want to use this time, I think we're going to have an opportunity for engagement with you all here, and I know that many people who work on college campuses and faculty I was excited to see. So wondering what you're thinking about this topic and what questions you may have for the panel or for our office, or just things that we need to take back. And to remind you that we have the little wish board. I see some of you have your wishes, but we're at a unique opportunity where we can think about what the future is, acknowledging what our current situation is and how to move forward. So I want to make sure that we're using the time to do that. Aaron, I started to ask you kind of what are you seeing as successful, and what can employers, I think that was the kind of question, what can employers do for colleges, or anything else that from the conversation up to this point that you think is helpful?
Yes, so looking across our 19 community colleges, we do have quite a few very successful employer-driven partnerships throughout our institutions. And Michelle talked about advanced manufacturing. 8 of our colleges have pretty strong partnerships with their local manufacturers. And those are really very important. I think they're a model for how we can expand to other industries as well. We also have a lot of partnerships in healthcare as well. Padma talked about that from the Rutgers side. But the components really are, you've got a group of very active employers who are very clear about what their needs are and what they're looking for and what they require when they hire people. Those are employers who oftentimes will also donate equipment to the college to make sure that the classrooms have state-of-the-art equipment and learning opportunities, and that's really obviously important in healthcare and manufacturing. And then thirdly, that they're making a commitment to hire students for internships, co-op opportunities, and then as full-time jobs. I think that the challenge that we face now, and we're working on it in the community colleges, is how do we take those individual partnerships and knit them together in a stronger statewide collaborative so that the 6 colleges that are working, 6 to 8 colleges working around advanced manufacturing are not just doing this in a vacuum, but are sharing curriculum, are sharing employer partners, are working together collectively, building partnerships with four-year and colleges and universities, and building partnerships, very importantly, with high schools to make sure that those pipelines and those pathways exist so that students know that they can go to a community college and get a credential and get a degree and work in manufacturing and then perhaps get an engineering degree and get a higher level job, that there is that stackability. So there's a lot of work I think we can do together to build those employer partnerships, and there's a realization that we've got some models to build on, but some work to do to strengthen those collaborations.
So at this point, I am going to open it up to what questions you may have. Is the appropriate way to ask a question to come here, or is there another way that people should ask questions?
There we go. I'm going to ask Maisha Howard and Dylan McNamara to please come up. They will take the mic to you and we will call your names. We have some questions that have already been submitted, and I will read those that are joining us on Twitter and have submitted their questions there. So Maisha, take it away.
Till from Edison.
Okay, so I'm the Director of Corporate Education and Training here at the Middlesex, and my question to the panel is, how are we engaging industry partners to embrace apprenticeships? It's one of the things that we find at times challenging to talk to them, and I wanted to see what your ideas were in this regard.
I feel like you're talking right to me, so I will take the first shot. So actually the goal of our task force was to bring everyone together around the table and then to educate and engage our members, because again, they own a piece of this. So they can't just say, send me the skilled workforce, or complain about what they are getting if they're not leaning back in to help to inform the academics in order to deliver the product to them, okay, being the student. So I would say that we are in an information delivery mode right now in terms of educating our own membership around this. I'd say we're doing a good job out of the gate, but we have a lot to do. And then I do have members who are directly today, right now, one in particular manufacturer interested in getting into the apprentice network and is saying, I'll stand up an apprentice program tomorrow, what do I need to do? And so then we go and we come to commissioner and we say, okay, commissioner, how do we get this rolling? So, any way that we can, and to our community colleges, many of whom are on the task force, we can follow up directly on some particular connections you may want to make within this region, and we can help you to do that.
Another question?
All right, so this is from Nick, submitted via Twitter. I'm currently a machinist in a registered apprenticeship in New Jersey, but many of my friends and peers are unaware of these great opportunities. How is OSHE promoting apprenticeships to New Jersey residents?
Yes, how are we doing that? So, I mean, one of the things that we need to do a better job of as a state is getting out in forums like this and actually talking to students, engaging people in the state, not just being in our offices in Trenton, right? But I have to think that it's more than just talking to people in individual instances. We need to be engaging with student governments, and I'm hopeful that that an integral part of this plan is actually this very thing that we're using. I've heard, I would love to actually hear if there's anybody who thinks we should be doing less work-based learning from the conversation today. It seems just from the students, obviously from the people that are here, that opportunity to have either an apprenticeship or just some other kind of work-based learning opportunity is something that would be valuable on a number of fronts. And so we want to do all we can to support that. We're also, obviously, we're working with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development and the Department of Education to stand up this apprenticeship task force so that if you're a student, if you're an employer, if you're a college, you can have kind of a front door entry and we can help you figure out how to engage in that way.
Hi, a very insightful conversation, so thank you for arranging this. My name is Elena Chernobilsky. I'm the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs at Caldwell University. And the conversation about stackable credentials has been on and off the table for a while at Caldwell. So I would really like to hear from you what you think about the concept. And if you find it positive, then maybe you can think out loud about what we as educators can do to ensure that students still get sort of full-rounded or well-rounded education, and they're able to, after receiving the stackable credential degree, for example, are still able to be prepared for the workforce, making decisions, critical thinking, and being good citizens and good workers for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I think stackable credentials are awesome in a way that we can especially engage people, adults and others who may not be, I'm not looking for 4-year experience right now. I'm not looking to come on campus. I'm not trying to throw Frisbee on the quad. I'm trying to do this part-time and I know exactly what I need, and you can help them knit together things. We'll also say, though, another plug and this is just me, I don't really have anything to plug. It's not like I get money for the plugs that I make, but the idea of students wanting the well-rounded experience versus wanting just the skill for the job. And I will say, I actually think that the plug was for apprenticeships or internships, because when you have that opportunity to be in a workplace, it helps you, even not just the technical skills, it helps you to see, ooh, I don't like being around people, or maybe I need to take a communications class. I know I'm not a typical student. I mentioned I really love school. I'm a nerd. But I got my doctorate later in life, and I was thankful that I did that, because the doctorate that I would have gotten straight out of my master's program is very different than what I got later, and that was because I had the opportunity to see what skills would actually be useful to me in growing in my career. And so when we're talking about stackable, the idea that you're applying what you're learning and you're seeing what it is, what gaps you have, based on what your goals in life are, I think actually helps you to say, oh, you know what, I do want that statistics class or whatever. I shouldn't use personal examples because I realize my family members then, watch them, but I will, because I've told her that I'm going to do this. My sister is an engineer, and she got a great engineering degree from Georgia Tech. She went and had a successful career at a, big Fortune 500 company, and then realized later that she wanted to get back and get a master's degree. I mean, these are very kind of high-level stackable credentials, but the principle is still the same, that you have that opportunity to go in and out and see what it is that that you need. So then she got kind of more of that business degree that she didn't have before. But I would love to have others answer about that.
One of the best things my predecessor left me was the goal of 65 by 25.
You do get, I'll give you 50 cents for
okay,
that.
Okay, great. I think credentials are extremely important. By the way, I know you said Caldwell. I know Caldwell has a 8 human resources apprenticeship program the second HR apprenticeship program in the country and the first in New Jersey. I'm very proud to have been a part of starting that. But I think credentials are extremely important. I think everybody here agrees. But while stackable is extremely important, I'm more concerned that people get credentials, whether they're stackable or not. While it's great to have a career pathway with stackable credentials, when we're talking about apprenticeship and it being a 3 or 4 year process, as commissioner, I'm very concerned that folks are getting credentials along the way, not just at the end. That after year 1, they're getting credentials for whatever it was, or they're getting some kind of certificate, or we're measuring their competencies or their badges. I know Zakiya and commissioners for me and now us are working with Credential Engine, which is a national nonprofit focused on measuring credentials and identifying them in an easily searchable format. So that way, if somebody starts any kind of training program, apprenticeship or not, maybe they're a year in, like maybe this isn't for me, that wasn't lost time. That they can get skills based on their competencies they learned that first year that can somehow be used for another employer or another career pathway.
Great. So we received 2 questions on the same topic. So I'll quote Michael from Twitter, who asked, "What are your plans to increase the amount of students that stay in New Jersey for college?"
I think that's for Colleen. No, just kidding. Just kidding. And I appreciate that people on Twitter have the nice names, and it's not like Hot Boy 101, something like that. So thank you, Michael. That's a question that I get probably more frequently than any other question, is what are we going to do about student out-migration? And I think that's something that we have to consider very carefully, the reasons why people decide to leave. So I'll say a few things, but I'd be interested in Michelle's thoughts because I know NJBIA has looked at this quite extensively. The first thing is looking at some of the factors that, what are people going to other schools for? So the top schools, in case you're wondering, that people go to out of state, New Jersey, are Penn State, they go to NYU, they go to Maryland. So they're not going super far. They're not going to UC Berkeley, they're not going to Tulane. They're kind of staying around, and some of those things I think we should think about, well, what is it that our colleges have? And sometimes people just want to get away from home. I have a cousin that, if you're watching right now, you should go on the college tour with me, but that he, lives in South Jersey, and I'm like, well, why don't you visit Montclair, okay? Because that's away. It's in traffic, it'll take you 2 hours, about the same amount of time, and it'll feel like a completely different place than Cherry Hill, okay? So there is a little bit of branding and sharing about the colleges that we need to be doing with our guidance counselors, and just making sure that with our students, they know what the options are, even within the state, to have a variety of different kinds of experiences. One of the things that we've already asked all the colleges, anyone who's part of this college leadership knows, what do they see as kind of their unique draw? Because if we were kind of marketing and selling, well, what is it that makes you unique? What are we telling our students about each of the individual colleges? The other thing that I'm going to mention is affordability. Because New Jersey's college, I'm not from New Jersey, but I study a lot of national data, and we have some of the highest tuition in any colleges nationwide. And I think people sometimes maybe don't think it's that bad. We have very generous financial aid, but the way it's distributed still leaves people having to pay quite a deal, and you can only chase tuition so much. And so when you have that kind of thing, the calculation between, okay, I'm a student, and if I don't get financial aid, the cost of going here versus out of state somewhere else where they may give me a little bit of merit aid because they love New Jersey kids. Every other state has, people that are specifically targeted to New Jersey just to recruit New Jersey students because we have such a great K-12 system. So thinking about what are the draws that we have here, including making our colleges more affordable, I think is part of that.
Yeah, the theme of our task force report was attractability and affordability of post-secondary education in New Jersey. On attractability, it's that we don't take enough time to recruit our own students in the state. The good news is that our post-secondary presidents from community college through 4-year public and private all agree we need to do a better job, and so the President's Council is standing up a branding task force, and BIA is very, very excited that we'll be working with the President's Council on that, and that will start in the new year. So that was a recommendation that came out of the report, and we're very, very excited about that, because when you ask students what do they want in their post-secondary, well, again, when I go out and I ask students, I hear, number one, we want diversity. Okay, New Jersey's like the most diverse state in the nation, check that box, right? Number two, we want to be near vibrant metropolitan centers. Okay, guess what? We can check that box. Number three, I want access to a high-paying job. Well, hello, we have the highest-paying jobs in the nation. So if we can check those 3 boxes, what is it that we are not telling? Okay. We also need to mine those students, and we need to invest in, and pay attention to what those students want and need. And yes, they're recruited heavily. I mean, my daughter went to High Point University, so she was an out-migrator. She still is now. She lives in Philly. I call her an out-migrator all the time. But we went to the information day at High Point, which is in North Carolina, and the president, very eloquent, Nito Quibane, stands up and he asks in the audience, he goes, "So, how many students are here from New Jersey today?" And if I could tell you, at least half the room, if not more, raised their hand. And he looks at his recruiters and he kind of giggles. He goes, "Yeah, I told you, don't we have enough New Jersey?" And then he goes, "But we love New Jersey." Okay, people are recruiting our students, and you see the billboards all across the state. And then on the affordability side, we are the 4th most expensive state in the nation for post-secondary. And our students graduate on average with $30,000 debt, okay? So we are very excited that our 2 years and 3 years and 4 years are all working together now on new strategies to deliver a more affordable BA for our students. And that's something, it's just the creativity. We don't have to do it like we did it for 100 years. We could be creative and deliver it at a lower cost.
I think to a certain extent it was already asked in terms of stackable credentials, but it seems to me for over 40 years as a higher ed professional, there's been too much of a silly debate about training versus education. Mm-hmm. And what we're all talking about today is the need to harmonize these things. And so really the question is, what can you or the state do from the bully pulpit or by other means to encourage ways in which we can bring these things together? There's just not enough capacity in the system for every university to have non-credit bearing certification programs and at the same time run their traditional programs. There needs to be, I think, more dialogue about how the things that can be accreditable or certifiable rather can also be accreditable. But that if you leave that to each individual institution, I don't think we'll ever get there. And I've seen other states where they behave as a system. I don't mean the mothership flagship university and its branch campuses. I mean all of the universities, at least the public ones, and even sometimes with cooperation of privates behave like the system. How can we make that happen?
It's like you set up this question, and we didn't discuss this earlier, but I think the first step is you have to have a plan, right? So the fact that we're actually talking about what we need to do and coming up with a collective vision is the first step. You can't act collectively unless you have a vision for where you would like to go. So I feel like we're getting there a little bit now, and then the next step is for people to come together and figure out how best to implement that vision. And certainly partnerships between employers and colleges across the state will be an integral part of that plan. I think just even based on the conversation today, there are lots of things that we could be doing to make sure that the courses, the programs, but also that students, importantly, have those work experiences. And so I know we've already been talking to Michelle and others in the business community about partnering with colleges. Some of those things are already happening, and whatever we can do at the state, Rob and I have been, Commissioner and I, and the Commissioner of Education have been working very much so on this apprenticeship, this idea of an apprenticeship task force. And you mentioned at the outset, you know, these two things are not in conflict. They build each other up. You know, in order to be effective at your job, you need to be continuously learning. And you know, there's been, and as a good learner, doing is part of learning well. So in the apprenticeship task force, which is going to be a way for people to actually, you know, get dollars for their apprenticeship programs, I think that'll be a very tangible step. But there are lots of things beyond just apprenticeships that we can do, and apprenticeships can happen at college. So sometimes I hear people talk about, you know, maybe they should do apprenticeships instead of going to college. It's like, those things don't have to be in conflict. They can do an apprenticeship while they're in college. I mean, they can also do an apprenticeship outside of college, but those two things don't have to be in conflict, and every student could probably benefit from those kinds of experiences. I want to ask the panel one final question, but I do know that our Commissioner of Labor has to leave, so I want to thank him for his participation today. Thank you. Okay, so the last question is kind of, I'm forcing you all to do the activity that we have in the back, which is if you had one wish for our higher education, the future of higher education in the state, it can be related to what, you know, the higher education industry and the economy or something else, but what would that be? So just for something for us to take away moving forward, and we can start at the end with Padma and come down to Michelle.
I would like all the higher education institutions to work together in harmony than competing with each other in providing high quality standard education which is core competency based, rather than each colleges have their own way of saying that our education has this many credits or your credits. Transfer becomes easier, so students don't have to repeat the same classes all over again. So that would be my one wish, that we all work together in harmony with, core competency-based education.
Thank you.
So my one wish, I'll build on, I think, what Don said about harmonizing training and education. I think that's a good way to think about this discussion. So thank you for offering that framework. And I think that building on what Padma said, I think we need to figure out what are the structures that we need to build thoughtfully, intentionally to allow for that collaboration to occur. Should it be around our industry? Should we have a collaboration around advanced manufacturing that brings together our colleges, community colleges, universities, and high schools around pathways and stackable credentials and interact with employers? All of our educational institutions are all interacting with employers. I'm sure Michelle knows this, that her employers probably have a hard time finding who to talk to at the local institution, and we have a hard time figuring out who to reach out to. So I think a structure of collaboration that is industry focused or career pathway focused would be very, very helpful to bring us together. One quick plug while I'm here, we're launching an effort called Vision 2028 at the Council of Community Colleges to build a framework for the future. We're having a big conference here at Middlesex on Friday. I encourage you all to go to njccc.org/Vision 2028 and give us your suggestions on how we can build a stronger framework for the future of community colleges.
Okay, so my one wish would be to a little bit more focus on small business, that corporate is not the only thing. What you're going to college for is not just for corporate. People ask me all the time why I even went to college, why I got my degree if I was just going to open my own business. But I learned a lot, at least from my internships and my small business class at Kane, but there was only one option for that, was to take that one class. There's a lot more that I could have learned in school that I didn't have to learn, just by making mistakes. And that is definitely something I think that could be an option, that you can get a small business education as well as corporate America.
Thank you. Plugging entrepreneurship. I love women entrepreneurs, and we're promoting that here. Yes.
My biggest wish for higher education is mostly the focus on entrance exams into these universities. Most students don't go to college because they may not have the same access to certain programs when they're younger as other students do. Also, so much focusing on the SATs and the ACT, like I did terrible on both of those exams, but I'm one of the top students in my business program in my university. So that, to me, that doesn't really correlate to how a student is going to do in university. I feel like you should give this person an opportunity to get a higher education, because at the end of the day, if you're a higher education administrator or anybody that works in higher education, you want to provide someone the ability to, how do I say this, like move on in their life, like continuous mobility. Like one of the great things of St. Peter's is that a lot of people get accepted into the university, a lot of kids that are underprivileged, and they meet professors that are, already these big shot corporate people like from Morgan Stanley, from Chase or whatever. And they help these students develop into these great people. And yeah, basically that's what I want from higher education, not to focus so much on the grades, more on the person that wants to get into your school to hopefully contribute to the world or to your community.
Thank you.
As someone who didn't break 900 on their SATs, okay, I hear you on that one. I think I turned out okay on the educational side. So my big aspirational goal at the end is to leverage the level of engagement of our companies and into the process, and then to have education receive them, okay? And we surveyed our members and we asked them, do you partner at your local level, be it K-12, community college, or career and technical education? And for those who answered yes, it was a very, very small percentage, okay? For those who answered no, we went on to say, and why not? And we had a drop down, and one of the responses was, I didn't know I could. And that's where the vast majority of those who did not partner landed. I didn't know I could. So it's incumbent upon us, and we're in the perfect space to make that collaboration, to do that. So that's my nirvana in this situation.
Do you have one more thing?
Yes, sure. Better access also to children with disabilities. Like, I'm not going to say the school, but it got in trouble because one of the students fell while heading to class because it's not accessible to children with disabilities. This girl, she had crutches and she tripped on the stairs and almost broke all of her extremities, her limbs, her everything. And I feel like these schools should have more access to these kids and have, like, in middle school, in my middle school, they had teachers that would focus on these students and help them develop to catch up with the rest of quote-unquote people that don't have disabilities.
Thank you for that important reminder. It goes back to, talked about students today are more diverse than they used to be, have a greater set of needs, so we need to acknowledge that within our higher education institutions. I am about to wrap this up because I feel like it has been a productive conversation, and I've always been taught that you end on a high note. And so, I'm not going to be like Jordan and try to retire after many more years. I'm going to retire when I'm on top. So, just want to thank the panel for the conversation today. It was really, really fruitful. So, I want to thank all of you. OSHE, we are learning as we're going to, so we have 2 more of these, and this is like we have our, I feel like when we're in our office, it's the classroom portion of this where we like type out how we think this is going to go and what time we're going to do this, and this is like the work-based learning portion of it, right? So we'll go back into the classroom and apply what we learned today, and then next week on November 19th, we'll have our next forum at Rowan University on college affordability. So if anybody here or online is interested, if you know someone that is interested, please spread the word. And then right after that, on November 20th at Rutgers Newark, we will have a forum on student success. So we will apply the things that we learned there and have continued robust conversations about these topics. Again, I look forward to continued conversation. If you want to provide more feedback on the board, you can. Also look out for the survey. That link will be going out this week. So again, thank you, and I appreciate the conversation.